Hello, guys. This is Avcoor, and I'm continuing my series on classes. I want to talk about the archer next, or the shooter, whichever you want to call them. This is a pretty interesting class. I thought this class was more of a PVE class, but from the way it's shaping up, they're more for PvP, which is kind of weird because in Landgresser, archers weren't that great in PvP. I mean, we had like one. Olivier, he was pretty good. He was like an AoE PvP unit. So it's kind of strange that we actually would have archers to be a strong PvP class. In fact, there's only really one good one right now. Well, one and a half, I should say. They're good in PvE content as well. I used to play this character who we're talking about as we speak, Brownie. I used to play Brownie all the time. Brownie actually has, well, I'm just going to call it Canto. Brownie has Canto in his kit that allows him to attack and move. Well, it's in his skill. In his skills, he has a move that allows him to attack and move backward. And that's one of the defining skills for good archers is Canto. Like there's certain aspects of Brownie that I like, and there are certain aspects that I don't. But let me go over the stats that you would want to have for your archer. You want your archer to have as much attack as possible. Their attack stat is so important because they do not attack on a counterattack. Unless they are attacked at range, they do not counterattack, which is one of the biggest letdowns of this class. I hope they create like skills that allow them to counterattack at close range, which would be pretty interesting. But for now, they cannot do this. Another stat that you want them to have in high volume is HP. I can't stress enough how much value HP is in this game. It's first, it's whatever attacking stat you're using for whatever DPS class, then it has to be HP. It has to be that stat. If you don't invest in that stat, then it's kind of whatever. So that's what you want for your archer. And your third stat is concentration. Archers rely on crit to do the highest levels of damage that is possible. And without crit rate, they suffer because their attack is not as high as warriors. Warriors typically have the assassins and warriors typically have the highest attack in this game. And for some reason, warriors actually have more attack than archers and assassins. So the crit for the archer is important as they have the third highest attack stat in the game amongst their classes, with tank being the last class that has the most attack. It's warrior, it's assassin, then it's archer, then it's tank. So archers and assassins are more dependent on their crit to get over that threshold. So this is the stat you need to invest in. And magic defense is preferred over defense because they fight a lot of wizards. So you have to keep that in mind when you are building your archer or shooter. That they're gonna be facing a lot of wizards because that's the class that you want them to kill. Of priests and wizards because they're designed to kill squishies, kind of like the assassin, but they do so at range. So they have to engage more, and you're expected to take a hit from those classes. So let's talk about equipment for a second. They use light-based equipment. I mean, in like mid-level equipment, like the heavy armors for warriors and tanks, light armors for medium, light or medium armors for uh, assassins and archers, and robes and stuff are for wizards and priests. So they use the middle grade equipment like the hats and the dusters, and they only use bows. This is the only weapon that they use. So like other classes who have variations in the weapons that they use, the archer does not have that, so you don't have to worry about it. But they have the least characters right now, so we'll go into that right now. So, as you can tell, archers have the least classes in the game. The least classes. They have two SSR classes, one R unit and one SR unit, which is Browning, who we just talked about. So this will be a much shorter video because there's just not many characters to deal with here. There's not much to speak on. But let's talk about Brownie first, and then we'll go over the last two SSR units, and we'll end the video there. What we want and expect for archers to do. Okay, you want them to increase their physical attack. I think this is good. Gain additional movement after battle, and you want them to have Kanto. So, as far as the baseline of what you would expect for an archer to do, this character Brownie is doing it. But when I look at his PvE prospects, they're pretty low. So this guy ranks him pretty low. But from my experience using Brownie and dropping him, this is pretty much what you expect. Because I actually have a character that does the same thing he does. And that's why I kind of dropped him. I have the wizard. I'll talk about her in a character overview. And she's the reason why I dropped Brownie, because she does the exact same effect of moving 2 tiles after she attacks. And everybody who plays this game knows who she is, so we'll move on. Realm of Punishment, I want to talk about the skill and the fact that this is something that you want your archer to do. You want them to actually apply slow to the tank in order to strip them of the ability to guard units. This is the core skill, and I think every one of them should have the option of doing so. Because archers have to do status effects. The archers can't heal. Archers can't block for other units. Archers can't dodge. Archers are archers really don't buff other units, so a lot of their utility and usefulness comes from doing damage and dealing stats effects. So you want them to do a little AoE, little stats effects, but high damage. And this skill accomplishes that. And like vulnerability, solid. Continuous fire is kind of a consistent thing with archers. Solid armor is garbage. Well, it's garbage for Brownie. It's kind of a buff. Which he has a little buffing potential, but it's not that great. Increased crit chance. Oh, this is another good aspect I want to talk about. Vigilant. If you play like some of the maps, you'll see like there's a certain area where enemies move into that area and then a character automatically attacks. I think that's important. So Brownie for me is a solid character. I don't think he's that bad, but he's ranked really low. I don't think he's that bad. Silva, Silva's actually solid. I would rank her the same way as he did, but if you're free to play, she's pretty good. She's pretty good. Increased critical chance after dealing critical hit, deal additional damage. This kind of sucks because this makes you have to invest heavily into crit, and for an archer, I think Brownie's passive is actually better because you want to actually position your archer better. Any move that allows you to attack and move is pretty golden, and the fact that she doesn't have this is a big letdown for me. Of course, increasing your crit and doing extra damage is good, But for an archer, your movement and your range is like king, and for her not to have anything to influence that is pretty hurtful. But for some reason, they gave her a leader passive, whatever, and she needs to have a warrior and a tank to do that, which is pretty good because you deal additional damage, and additional damage is pretty good for archers. Yeah, that's garbage. It's good, but for an archer, you want them to do massive amount of damage and debuffs. I mean, the reducing cooldown is okay, but this is pretty solid because it's the same skill Brownie had. This deals stats effects. Whatever. And this is like the typical buff they get. Whatever. And then they place traps where you do a trap where it's pretty good, but you want your archer to do more damage. But when they're not doing damage, this is pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go to. I feel bad for the character. She had potential, but oh well. She had potential, and that's about it. The damage. This is really good. This first power to this passive is super good. The damage of active attacks increases by 7%. So you increase damage, gain rapid fire. Brownie's secondary passive is better. It kind of hurts her as a unit, but you'll see that her damage output is super high. And she's like the typical archer that in every video game gets increased damage by flying enemies, which none of the classes fly, so nuts to that. And she gets precision, which is good for archers to negate 20% of defense. That's pretty good. You want your archer to deal massive amount of damage and gain extra action. So this is really good. For her to get extra action and precision is really good. I just feel bad that she doesn't have like the same mobility opportunities as Brownie. But she gets to move 2 turns and get uh, 2 extra. She gains precision for 2 turns and gain an additional action for 2 tiles. That's really good. Struggle is pretty good for a one cost passive. And reduce one round. That's pretty good. And she has the vigilant, and she has a better buff passive. Oh, and then she has helping hand. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's kind of what you want from your assassin. I think, like when you look at assassin, you got to look at Brownie, you got to look at Erica and Silva. I think Brownie is, as the basic nuts and bolts aspects of what you want an archer to do. Though he does not excel at it, he actually does it. And I'm probably going to have to build Brownie because I don't think I'm going to get a chance to get the other archer. So later on in my collection of videos after I get through this series, we'll probably look at Brownie again in a character overview because there's some good things to talk about. As far as Erica, she has the DPS potential. She's like the pinnacle of what you want your archer to do offensively in PvP because she's pretty good in PvP because she has extra movement and she has like certain skills that allow her to maximize her damage opportunity. Silva's just a misplaced character. We'll talk about them in character overviews in depth. Because there's ways to make silver better. She's not a lost cause, but she requires heavy investment where Erica does not. And Hayates are garbage. So that's what it is. But as far as your archer goes, you want them to perform at a certain level. You want them to be able to manipulate their mobility. You want them to do high DPS, and you want them to put status effects on. And you want them on some level to do a slight buff that may alter the battle in a small way. And that's it for that video. But I want you to consider the fact that we will get more archers, so this dynamic might change. There might be a combination between Brownie and Silva or Brown and Erica. So stay tuned. If you like my content, the like, share, subscribe button. Laters.